Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to WCS America Premier League. We are in the middle of Group G in the winners' games today. It's Sen versus Crank. Crank taking game number 1 pretty awesomely. Some great engagements, some great mechanics shown by Crank. But Sen's got to come back in game number 2, and it's going to be on Belcher Vestige.
You know, that was a really great game in a lot of ways. I really loved how Sen, even as he was putting on that Roach Hydra pressure early in the game, he transitioned to the Vipers knowing he would need those against a high-tech competition. And then Crank, anticipating that, he had Templar out in time to deal with the Vipers. So Crank was able to insanely quickly build up a Colossi, Void Ray, Templar Force because he just basically didn't make Stalkers. He only made Zealots to supplement it so he could really have enough gas to go in those 3 directions. And then as he was able to hold out longer and longer, he built that Force up to the point where this Roach Hydra couldn't cut anymore.
Do you think we're going to be seeing the same type of play style coming out here from Sen again? Do you think he's going to be able to make something happen differently than game number 1?
You know, I think he's going to play the same style. But this is a different map. Of course, he can rally troops in a little bit faster, so we can see a totally different game.
All right, guys. So spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner from Team Axiom, our blue Protoss player, it is Crank. Definitely not cranky today. He's winning every single game. Spawning up here in the top left-hand corner from Team Gamma Bear, our red Zerg player, it is Sen.
The big question is, how is Crank going to play this game? Of course, that last game he played very defensively and very tech-orientated, and that's pretty much how almost every Protoss approaches Whirlwind, so it's hard to really tell his exact style he favors at this moment based on that map. But Belcher Vestige is a map where pretty much every style works. You can play that same style. You can do 2-base timing styles. They're pretty effective here as well. You can do, you know, if you just want to make a lower tech, you know, Blink Stalker Colossi, that's effective here as well. It's a very versatile map as far as almost anything goes in pretty much every matchup. So I think we're going to see, you know, what Crank thinks is the strongest way to play PvZ here on this map.
Given those engagements and seeing the mechanical advantage that he had over his opponent, I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see some sort of 2-base timing push. He realized that the army control from Sen just was not able to match his army control. Even with the pretty clutch abducts in the very beginning of the game, the little bit of an issue with army composition later on in the game, I think Crank realized that just every single engagement didn't matter exactly how it went in the beginning. As long as his mechanics held up, and they did every single time, he was able to win. So Sen is going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage if there is a huge 2-base timing push, because Crank's control is easily top 3.
Crank going again for that Forge expansion. Following it up with a gateway where we see a cannon in this wall directly after that. Of course, Sen has seen absolutely everything that's happening. And as he sees this cannon being built, he's not going to do anything crazy and produce a whole bunch of Zergians and up to catch Crank off guard, knowing that there's a cannon already on the way.
Sen's Overlord is fearless. It saw the photon cannon going up, and instead of going away from it, actually went towards it for a couple of seconds. And if it's not careful, there we go. Okay, just making sure. The cannon was just about to finish up there, and that poor Overlord was going to get taken out. But I see something that's about to kill me start being built. I'm not going to go right towards it like the Overlord did.
Well, see, that's what makes this Overlord a true hero to his race. Personal safety is of no concern.
I don't think personal safety is actually even in his thought pattern, because he's controlled by the Overmind, well, the Oversen, and so he just does what Sen tells him to do.
So Sen apparently, you know, cares more about knowing what Crank is up to than about the life of this little Overlord over here.
Fluffy little Overlord.
Poor little
it's a
guy.
shame. He should not be living in these conditions. Anyway, nothing too crazy coming out. Nice little wall coming out here from Crank, getting both of his gases in his main as well as a Forge. So we might start seeing the beginnings of a timing push come out of this if we start seeing that Forge start +1 rather shortly, which I wouldn't assume Crank would make it for no reason at all.
The probe confirms the 3rd base of Sen. That's always a really valuable scout as a Protoss to know the Zerg is taking that 3rd base before they're getting any gas mining going on.
That probe is jetting away as fast as it can. The Zergling is trying to catch up, but he's only getting like 1 or so hit.
Double gas going now for Sen. Started them when he was at 40 supply. There's really, if you're going to play this gasless 3rd style that was kind of the standard in Wings of Liberty, and it's still very popular in Heart of the Storm as well. The two most common times to get that gas is you either get 2 gases when you're at 40 supply, or you wait until you're at 50 and then you get 3.
The Overlord does see the gas timings out here for Crank, and that's one of those incredibly important things here, of just noting exactly when your opponent's getting the gas, because it kind of helps you start filtering out what kind of builds he's going for. Obviously, with grabbing all 4 geysers here, he's going to know that he's going for an incredibly high-tech build. Well, not high-tech, but gas-intensive, I guess.
Not going to do any mass cell aggression or anything like we saw out of Capoche in that first map on Star Station. Instead, going straight for the Colossi.
Now, do you think this is going to be a 2-base Colossus timing push?
You know, it's not 100% certain at this point in the game. It could be that 2 Immortal, 2 Colossi push that we've seen gain a lot of popularity on Korea, especially on a map like Belcher Vestige, where there's a lot of different ramps you can manipulate to your advantage. And in fact, given the fact he's not building probes anymore, it does look like it is going to be that timing. So he's going to add a lot more gateways. No more probes are going to come out. And he's going to wait until he gets a second Colossi out. Of course, he's going to have 2 Immortals as well, so he's going to be pretty good against almost any ground forces Zerg can throw at him.
Now the Overlords both dive in here. One of them is actually going to scout out the Robo facility. The other one's going to scout out the 3 gateways that are being made here in the main base. He's going to see the Immortal coming out, not an Observer. Overlord gets in with 1 health away from that sentry, but neither of them scout out the robotics bay and the coming technology out of that, which is a thermal lance.
It's a little bit of an unfortunate scout for Sen. If he just tries to use plain Roach Hydra against Crank, that's a very, very tough way to defend this push as long as Crank's force fields are good. And of course, Crank does have amazing force fields, but he currently does only have a single sentry, so he's going to need to warp in several more, as sentries are really the backbone of this push. I mean, it does involve 2 Immortals and 2 Colossi, but it's really all about the sentries. If you don't have the good force fields, the Roaches will just run in and kill everything.
Now, Axlev, we were talking before about the fearless Overlord that came out here from Sen. I don't know if you noticed, but there were 2 drones and a single Zergling that were hanging out in front of Crank's base. Really putting their fears away and just hanging out right next to the wall of the Protoss.
Well, sometimes the drones want to get into action and scout out their opponent too. They're like, is it still safe to mine? I gotta know what the Protoss is doing.
And he brought his friend because the buddy system.
That's right. That's exactly right. Of course, now we see Crank starting to move out here. Plenty of sentries as well. Second Colossus is going to join the battle. And as he moves out, he's going to have plenty of warp gates to warp in additional reinforcements.
I really like that. He actually hallucinated a Void Ray to chase away that Zergling, which may be a nice little feint. Is Sen going to fall for it? Doesn't look like it. A lot of Roaches coming out here. Not a single anti-air unit, no Spore Crawlers or anything.
What Sen is going to need to do, he's going to need to attack from multiple angles here. Because if he goes from a straight angle, the force fields will absolutely destroy him. In fact, even from multiple angles, with the Time Warp and force fields all available, this is going to be a very difficult hold by Sen.
Now here comes all those Roaches. They're getting a really nice concave. Force fields a little late there for Crank. Crank losing one of his Colossus. Keeps the other one, zones it back. The Immortal still doing a lot of work, still chewing through Sen's forces. Not too much of an issue here. So many sentries, but they did use a lot of force fields to make that a favorable battle. They're going to have to hold off a little bit longer for them to recharge their energy there.
Losing that 1 Colossus was such a big deal for Crank. Now, as long as Sen continues to reinforce units and takes the battles in locations that favor him, I don't know if Crank can continue to push on. He still has a lot of force fields, and if he can make the fight happen where Sen is only attacking him from a single direction, those force fields can be absolutely devastating.
Bringing in a Warp Prism here, so it's going to be allow him to do a little bit of cute Warp Prism drop play with the Immortals, keeping them alive a little bit longer.
Oh, Sen needs to set up a flank. If he tries to take this on heads-on with just Roaches, it's going to be a very difficult battle. Is he going to move some of these units around the flank? Oh, there they go.
The Mothership Core does scout off this troop movement, though.
And you know, there's so many more units being warped in here for Crank. This could really go either way. Sen now set up to attack from 2 directions.
And he took out the rocks, so he's not going to be able to retreat and use those rocks as a nice place to put a whole bunch of force fields. A lot of force fields going down, though. Sen gets a lot of Roaches in here, trying to take out the Colossus. Does take out the Colossus. Now the Immortals are still alive. The Warp Prism where did the Warp Prism go? It's not able to start lifting up the Immortals to keep them alive for longer.
That's right, because very intelligently, Sen sent a few units to take out that pylon that was back there, and that meant that Crank had to use Warp Prism to warp in units instead of to micro.
Beautiful play here from Sen. Very, very smart play. I'm not too surprised. Moves his Roaches forward a little bit early before any more reinforcements come in here. Actually taking a lot of losses. The Zealots and the Immortals are still alive, and they're actually chewing through these Roaches pretty easily.
Oh, but a Speeding flank comes in. No Zealots on the left side. Speedings absorb a lot of that anti-armor damage from the Mortals and Stalkers, and a huge swell of Roaches from the back as well. No more force fields. Crank's force is going to be decimated here.
And there's no energy on the Mothership Core for a recall. Sen once again baiting his army into baiting his opponent with a really small army into a position where he knows he can get a great engagement. Sen is just so smart. He's so ahead of his opponents in positioning.
Of course, Crank there had to come in on the attack, knowing he was on 2 bases. Sen saying, I'm just going to be patient. If you have to attack, that means I should pick the location of where to attack. Pick the great location. Now he's on the counter pressure. Crank with so few units back here to defend.
Crank left 2 of his sentries at the very, very front of the wall. The Roaches came in and poked them down before they threw out any type of force field. There's only a single sentry left. It doesn't have enough for a force field. There are so many Roaches out here, Axelav, and they are tearing through everything in this Protoss army. There are a lot of Zealots. There are 2 Immortals, but it's just not enough. Sen swarming his opponent and taking victory in game number 2.
Sen very comfortable against that timing attack. That's something we've seen take out a lot of the top Korean Zergs over in WCS Korea, as well as the Pro League. A very popular attack in the current metagame. But Sen saying, you know what, I'm just going to build a lot of Roaches. And as long as I hit my angles right, that attack hits late enough, I can just keep reinforcing, and 3 bases to 2. I can reinforce at a faster rate than you.
We can see that here he positions the army so that there's nowhere it can go, and he just then completely surrounds it with Roaches, just waiting for that reinforcement to come in, and it actually doesn't even lose the entire, the smaller force that he used to bait the other army into that position. Sen, he's got to be like a master of chess.
Definitely knows how to attack your opponent from multiple angles there. Of course, he ties up the series 1-1. Game number 3 will be coming up after a short break.